Assalamu alaikum, this is Dr. Mona Al-Idrisi, author of the Muslim Narcissist book and empowerment coach for Muslims. In today's podcast, I will be answering some questions that I received about parents and their rights. So I wanted to share the answers with you as I thought they were very important, as many of them are fiqh related. So as always, kindly click on the like button if this podcast helps you, and do share it with others whom you feel could benefit from this information. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you'd like to be notified of when I drop a new podcast, or you can sign up to the newsletter as well on the website, where you'll be notified via email about news and podcast releases. If you need one-to-one counselling and coaching, you can find a link below that will guide you to the page on the website that gives you all the information about the programs and sessions I offer. Or you can email me directly if you have an urgent question to ask. I've provided my email address in the description box below. Do bear with me with email replies. I get so many emails every week, so it may take some time for me to get back to you, so your patience will be greatly appreciated. And if you're new to this channel, I'd like to welcome you, and I pray that you find the information here beneficial, supportive, and gives you the answers, the closure, the clarity, and the understanding that you need in your situation. So let's jump into the Q&A. And the first question is, what does it mean to sever ties with your parents? And what is the understanding and the wisdom behind it being forbidden to sever family ties? And why is there nothing clear in the Quran or Hadith about severing ties with toxic and abusive Muslim parents? So essentially what it means to sever ties with toxic parents is to no longer have any contact or communication with them, and you wash your hands of your duties and responsibilities towards them. So it's like someone changing their name and moving to China because they don't want to be found, they don't want to be contacted, and they don't want to be asked for anything that they don't want to do. Okay? So you won't find these people having any contact with their parents in Eid or Ramadan or special occasions. These people will go on to have families and their parents won't know about it. And even if their parents know about it, there's no contact between them and their new grandchildren and so on. So this is haram in Islam for one main reason. And of course there will be other reasons too, but this will be the main one. It's because your family members are your only mahrams. Okay, Silat al-Rahim is linked to your family members being your mahram. Now let me give you an example of what could happen if you were to completely sever ties and why it's forbidden in Islam. There have been cases where women have severed ties with their fathers who were abusive, or the fathers have severed ties with them. I'll come on to this later, when the parents do it to their children. So at the time of the nikah ceremony, a woman may be told by the sheikh that the nikah ceremony will not go ahead until her mahram arrives, until her wali comes and gives her away in marriage and approves the marriage and gives his blessing. So as we know, a woman who has never been married before has to have the presence of her wali, who is her father, at the time of marriage if he is alive. And some sheikhs will not even accept a power of attorney from the father to another male family member if he is still alive. Okay, I know this happened in Saudi for a very long time. If a father did not attend the nikah ceremony, even if her uncles were present, even if her brothers were there, the marriage will not go ahead. Because the sheikh will say, you either provide me with a death certificate for your father, or you bring him here. Where is he? Bring him. So this can cause a huge problem for those who have severed ties with their fathers, and vice versa. You know, in Saudi, if a man was in jail, and that was the reason why he couldn't attend his daughter's marriage, he would be released from jail for the appointment to attend as her wali, and then he would be imprisoned again after that. That's how important the presence of the wali is to many prominent sheikhs who are very, very strict with this ruling that there is no marriage without a mahram, Even if there's a power of attorney, if he's alive, he comes himself. Even if he's on the other side of the world, he is asked to fly over and attend the marriage ceremony to make the marriage valid. Even if he's on his deathbed or he's very ill in hospital, he has to provide a video recording, so someone does a recording of him stating that he is approving the marriage of his daughter to the man who has proposed. So there wasn't any leeway with this before. Now, because of all the abuse cases that have come up and the cases of fathers who completely disappear, some sheikhs are starting to accept the power of attorney. So her brother will be able to stand in as her wali if the father can't be found at all. However, there are still some places where this is not accepted. Okay, your father has the responsibility of attending your marriage if he is alive. So people who have severed ties with their fathers will suffer with this. Some women may never get married because of this, and social issues will arise, such as the increase in zina, the increase in depression. Some women may get involved in invalid nikah contracts because her wali is not present, and so on and so forth. So it causes more problems when you sever ties with your parent who has responsibilities over you. So you're still under his care. Now, when it comes to women, I'll give you the example of a mother who has severed ties with her son, or he severed ties with her, and they haven't spoken for 20 years. Now, let's say for argument's sake, he's got another 2 brothers. So she's a mother of 3 boys. And in the 20 years, her father passes away, her husband passes away, and something happens to the 2 boys. One of them gets really sick, one of them might pass away as well, or she may have issues with him and severe ties with him too. Now let's say this mother falls ill and she needs an operation, and doctors say that she has to fly to another country to have this operation because specialists for her case are elsewhere, and she needs a mahram to go with her. And the only person who can go with her is her son, whom she hasn't spoken to for 20 years. So she will suffer if she can't get in contact with him because she needs the operation. So he actually has a duty towards her as her mahram to be there for her. Even if they're not on good terms, he needs to be there for her because this is his responsibility towards her. Now, this comes out of the responsibility of returning the favor of the good treatment your family gave you or your parents gave you when you were growing up, and everything that they were meant to do for you, such as provide for you, take care of you, be loving with you and patient and all of that. This is outside that box. This now is about mahram. Okay, halal and haram. So if your mother is in need of a mahram, you need to step on your pride and actually be there for her, and vice versa. Because if you don't, a greater problem will come out of it. And the greater problem can cause you guilt for the rest of your life. So if your mother was to pass away because she didn't get that operation, even if you haven't spoken to each other for 20 years because she's super abusive, it's you who will suffer from the guilt. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want you to face that. So when it comes to mahram, it's a serious subject. And that's why it's haram to sever family ties, because of the greater issues that will come out of doing so later on. Now, some people might say, well, that's not my problem. They should have treated me better when I was a child. They should never have abused me. They should have thought about that. It's true. They should have thought about that. However, there will come times when your life will become so much more difficult than it already is if you're not there for them in this duty, in this matter. So even if you have a father who was abusive in various ways, whether that was physically, sexually, mentally, spiritually, you will need him eventually at some point in your life, or you may need him. You never know what will happen in your life when you need your father around. or when you need your mother around. So you've got to be very careful. And that's why sheikhs never tell people to completely sever ties. Because when you sever ties as well, you may end up having siblings you don't know about. You may end up having grandchildren you never know about. And this is a real problem. Okay? So sheikhs always say that you can maintain the longest distance, but don't cut the thread completely. Don't cut it. Because you may need your family members later in life when you have no one else to turn to, because they're your only mahrams left, especially if you're not married. And a lot of sheikhs will recommend that women in particular get married when they have very big issues with their parents, so that the husband now becomes their wali and their mahram, just in case anything happens. I've seen a lot of sheikhs and muftis advise these women who have great issues with their parents to get married from a young age to a good man who proposes, so that they can avoid a huge problem that is mahram related in the future. But it doesn't mean that they have to sever ties. It just means that they are safe now in the presence of another wali, but they can maintain very long distances with their toxic parents. Okay, so they could move to another country, another city, if that's going to make it safer for them, and communicate with their parents from a safer distance. Some sheikhs and muftis might even suggest that women move in with other family members, so they stay away from their toxic parents, such as, empathic uncles, aunties, brothers and sisters. It's better for them to move out and maintain, a decent enough distance where abuse no longer happens, than to completely cut, just in case something arises in the future where your mahram is needed, your father is needed, your mother is needed, or they need you, and you need to step up to that duty. Now, in regards to the other question about why there is no clear evidence in the Quran and Sunnah about how to deal with toxic parents, we need to go back to the 4 categories of parents that I mentioned in my previous podcast to be able to answer this properly. Okay? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells everyone to treat their parents well, honour them well, and to not sever ties with family members, especially your parents. However, there's no ruling on what to do if those parents do not give you your rights, if those parents are abusive, if they are criminal, if they are psychopathic and all of that. And the reason is because it's considered to be an abnormal case when parents are like this with their children. Okay, like I mentioned before, it's not normal for a mother who has been through 9 months of pregnancy and she's given birth and she's breastfed and she's weaned her baby and gone through all of those hardships to treat her child in a cruel manner. And it's not normal for a father to abandon his children and not provide for them and harm them and abuse them and deprive them and torment them. These are major sins in Islam. So parents who fall into category 1, and they are the parents who intentionally abuse their children during childhood, teenage years and adulthood, they are the ones who get referred to the court. So it becomes mas'ala fiqhiyya, which means that a special ruling has to be applied to them in the court because they're abnormal and they have overstepped many boundaries and deprived their children from their rights. And they do it intentionally because they don't want to change. No matter how many times their children tell them, "You're abusing me, you're hurting me, I can't live like this, I'm feeling suicidal, I'm feeling depressed," they don't care. They keep going, and sometimes they get worse. They know what they're doing is wrong, but because of their own issues with their nafs and their qareen, and they might have jinn possession, they might have all sorts of severe mental health problems, they will escalate in their abuse the longer you stay with them. So it's very dangerous to be around parents in category 1. So the case is referred to a mufti or a judge. And we know this from the story of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, when the father came to complain to him about his disobedient son, and the Khalifa asked to speak to the boy, because there has to be fairness here. Sometimes, and I'm saying sometimes, it's the children who are the cause of the escalation of parental abuse, because they are very disrespectful. They are very disobedient and naughty and rebellious because of what they learn in cartoons, video games, friends at school, cousins, and so on and so forth. So the judge has to determine what is the root cause of this abuse. Is it the rebellious nature of children, and these children can be young or they can be adults? Or is it parental oppression? Are they deliberately neglecting their children's needs out of punishment and out of spite and out of just being purely evil? So the judge here, or the mufti, they will apply a fatwa and they will offer solutions based on the situation of the individual who is complaining or the whole family. So if the whole family is being affected by the toxic parents, then there will be a ruling applied to this case that will be unique for them because of what they're going through and the severity of abuse. So in Islam, if you are living with parents and they are highly abusive, you need to get your solution from a mufti or a judge. Okay, because the mufti or the judge, they have to hear both sides in order to make a fair judgment. And in Muslim countries, if a father in particular has been extremely abusive and he's really overstepped the mark, he can get punished. He can actually get arrested and jailed and punished for this abuse that he's inflicted, because it's a major sin and it's affected the rest of his family. Okay, he's causing corruption in society that's starting with his family, because the home should be a safe place of peace and tranquility and charity. That's where you put your charity, not your abuse. And that's why during the reign of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, crime was almost non-existent, because the men feared being dragged in front of the Khalifa and being humiliated and punished for being an abuser to his family, because he did used to punish them back then. The same way people got punished for murdering someone or stealing from someone or committing zina with someone's wife, right? People do get punished in this dunya for major sins, and this is included. The issue that we have in the West is that there's no Khalifa to hold abusive men and abusive women accountable. So most people here get away with it. Okay, you have to resort to calling the police to get your rights and to feel safe, because there is no Sharia council or court in the West to turn to where people get punished or held accountable for their horrible actions. So in Islam, you will find that a lot of people did get punished for overstepping the mark. And until now in Muslim countries, there are fathers and malignant mothers who are held accountable for what they do to their children. However, in the West, you normally get guilt-tripped and shamed for complaining about your parents, and they tell you to fear Allah, and they say to you, how can you speak about your parents like this? Maybe you're telling them something abhorrent, something that they couldn't even imagine from how evil it is, and they don't want to hear it, they don't want to deal with it, so they're listening to your problem, but they're throwing it back at you in a guilt trip and shame, because they don't want to speak out, they don't want anything to do with this, especially if the person is someone who is well known in the community. They don't want to be the ones who speak out and ruffle people's feathers. So you'll find a lot of imams and preachers and scholars, they say, have patience, my brother, fear Allah, my sister, go back home and repent and fix the issues that you have with your father that causes him to be this abusive, and so on and so forth, because they don't want to deal with the rotten core of our societies. And the core of our societies, unfortunately, contains so many problems that are hidden and buried because no one wants to speak out about them. And there's no solution. People are told to just fear Allah. You can't sever ties with your parents. You have to deal with all this abuse for the rest of your life if you want to earn Jannah. And you have to forgive your abuser if you want Allah to forgive you. Where does this come from? Where does this come from? This is not Islam. When people back in the day went to a mufti or a judge, they were given solutions. Okay? So the mufti or the judge, because it was usually one or the other or both together, they would look at three things. In an abuse case, especially that which involves parents. And these three things will help them to determine how to best deal with the situation. So they look at both sides of the case, and then they see, is the victim at risk of losing their deen? Is the victim at risk of losing their mental health and sanity? And is the victim at risk of their safety being compromised? Okay? Because some people fear for their lives when they live with malignant narcissists, especially when you have a father who is constantly threatening to kill you, or he has a history of serious domestic violence or even sexual violence. So, like I said before, there are some women who are raped by their fathers. So, is it safe for this woman to stay in this family home? No. Is she losing her deen? Yes. Is she losing her mind? Is she having panic attacks? Is her health being compromised? Is her mental health being compromised? Yes. Then in this situation, the judge will look at who her mahrams are. So if she has other mahrams, then she is asked to go and stay with them. And the father is forced to sign a power of attorney to her other mahram so that she is no longer in need of any contact with him unless it's absolutely necessary. So you have to remember, there are so many women especially who run away from home to get away from toxic parents because no one's listening to them. And when they run away from home, especially at a young age, they will run into predatory arms. And these predators will prey on their vulnerability, and they will take advantage of the fact that they have a very bad relationship with their father, they are abuse victims, and they have no support from any male relatives. So if the woman is very naive and she falls for a predator's love bombing, she's going to get herself in a lot of problems. She will either marry another narcissist, get taken advantage of by a narcissist, or she will be trafficked. Okay? There are lots of women who get captured by men like this, who prey on vulnerable women, and they get them to work as prostitutes. So can you see that if this problem isn't solved when it comes to dealing with toxic parents, can you see how greater issues will come out of this, especially with the women? And children are born out of wedlock. Women lose their deen. There are so many women who run away from home. They hate Islam. They hate everything to do with it because of how their parents abused them with religion growing up. And they end up living with a boyfriend who's not Muslim, and they just live their life in haram. There's a lot of this, unfortunately, in our communities. Loads of women run away, and lots of men lose their deen completely because no one's listening. All they keep getting told is to fear Allah, fear Allah, fear Allah, and that they're all going to hell if they do not solve their problems. This is not a problem that they can resolve themselves. It's a fiqh matter. You need a fatwa for it. You need a judge ruling on your case because it's a very sensitive subject when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has stipulated that no one is to sever family ties. So when Allah says no one is to sever family ties and that you must honor parents and all of that, then an Islamic ruling has to come into place. And sometimes the judge will see that if the outcome is a woman or a man losing their deen and their mental health, and they've started to develop physical problems and illnesses like cancer, or they want to run away or commit suicide, here there is a high chance that a judge will say that there is to be no direct physical contact between a woman and her abusive father, or a son and his abusive mother, or his abusive father as well, and sometimes between a mother and her daughter, if the mother's very abusive. Sometimes the ruling will be that there's no physical contact, but the ties of kinship are maintained via text messages. And that's only because the judge or the mufti knows that there is a possibility one day that the parent will be needed to fulfill a mahram obligation in her life, or vice versa. Okay, so even if a father has not fulfilled any of his duties towards his daughters or his sons, when it comes to the duty of being there as a mahram, there's no way out of it. They will bring him, they will drag him. I know this happens in Muslim countries. This probably doesn't happen here in the West because the power of attorney does work here. But in Muslim countries, if the father is alive, like I said, he is brought before the judge or the mufti to fulfill his obligation as a mahram to his daughters. So in the meantime, a judge will assign the responsibility of women to the next mahram in line, who is usually the eldest brother, and then the brother after him, and the brother after him, and then the paternal uncle. And this happens in the meantime while he sends the father to therapy, rehab, ruqya, whatever it is that the father needs to go through to heal and get better so that he can perform his duties as a father efficiently. Now, sometimes in extreme cases, fathers can go to jail because of, horrific crimes they have committed against their own children. And if they never recover, or if they are adamant on not improving for their children because they are malignant narcissists and psychopaths who don't see anything wrong with them, then the judge or the mufti will assign permanent responsibility of the women to the other mahrams in line. Okay? And when that happens, it now becomes the responsibility of those brothers or those uncles to ensure that these women get married to good men so that they are taken care of. And this will be the main priority for judges and muftis because of the consequences that can occur if women were to be neglected and abandoned because they do not have their father around to take care of them and look after them financially. So some women have to resort to immoral work to earn money, and they end up marrying abusers because their fathers don't care about them and they don't have other male relatives who are supportive. Now, if a woman doesn't have any male relatives at all, or they're all malignant, or they're all man-children who don't care and so on, then the judge will assign himself as the wali of this woman. And what he will do is he will ensure that she is married sooner rather than later to a good man who can take care of her, because there's only so many women a judge can be responsible for. Okay? Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu was the wali of many women back in his time who didn't have male relatives to take care of them. And he used his wisdom and intelligence to apply the correct ruling to each individual case. And this is why it's haram for someone to generalize that it's okay to cut off your parents if people claim that they're toxic without knowing the case in its entirety. Only a judge or a mufti can do this, and not any mufti. He has to be a mufti who works in a high Islamic court. Okay? Because only they know, with their knowledge in fiqh, how to best navigate the situation without causing further harm to the individual who is being abused. So for example, if a woman has no male relatives, they can't say, cut off your toxic parents. Where will she go? What will she do? Who's there to protect her? Nobody. So they have to navigate the situation with wisdom. So the ruling for someone who has no male relatives at all will be different to the woman who has male relatives who can support and take care of her other than her father. The fatwa will be different. Okay? And in this situation, like I said before, a mufti might say that a woman should not have any physical contact with her father. Let's say there's been sexual abuse. And then this is applied in their life. However, the phone calls between them are still abusive. right? The father is still nasty. He's vile to her in his language whenever she calls him to maintain family ties. And she's thinking that, okay, I'm doing it from a safe distance where I'm still keeping in contact with my father because he's the only mahram I have left, but he's still nasty to me. He gives me anxiety. He gives me depression when I speak to him, and I'm unable to carry on like this. She goes back to the Mufti. She tells the Mufti this is what's happened. He brings the father back, and then he might issue a new fatwa for her that states that communication can only be via text message to maintain family ties. Now, if that doesn't work either, and the father still sends her aggressive messages, he's rude, he threatens her, he's not nice, she can again go back to the Mufti, present her evidence that this isn't working, and then what will happen is the Mufti might assign a mediator who is the middleman or the middle woman between them, who passes messages back and forth. So this mediator or this middle person will inform the father of the needs of the daughter, and he will inform the daughter of the needs of the father. And that way, they don't have to communicate directly, but it's done through a middle person. And this can sometimes be the safest way to maintain family ties. Okay? So there's hikmah involved in this. It's not straightforward. The fatwa that is applied is in relation to the circumstance of the victim and also the parent. So if the parent only has one child, then the Mufti will not issue a fatwa to say that the severing of ties is permissible here, because the mother might need this child later in life as a mahram. And she might have been a mother who did so much black magic on him, like horrific things. But if he's the only son, there will be no fatwa for him to state that he can cut ties because of this reason, okay? Now, if his mother in the future has to have an operation, like I said before, or she's on her deathbed, or, she needs a mahram to be there for her in a critical time, then this could be the reason he enters Jannah, because we know he doesn't want to. He doesn't want anything to do with her. But in a critical situation, he put Allah first. He knows he's the only one who is the mahram of his mother, and for the sake of Allah, he's going to bite the bullet despite everything she did to him when he was younger, and do this for the sake of Allah. Because other people can be there for her in other ways, such as, cooking for her, taking care of her. She can pay a nurse, she can pay someone to do her errands for her. And she might do this because she knows that she's got no right to ask her son for all of her rights as a mother and being taken care of, because she never took care of him when he was younger. She did black magic on him, and she beat him, and she was nasty and vile to him, and now she has to pay the consequences for that. You do get the exceptional, empathic people who will still be there for their parents and give them their rights in full, despite their parents being in category 1, and despite them not getting most of their rights when they were children and as adults from their parents. But for the sake of Allah, they do it. Okay, some people have, mashallah, the ability to do it, and other people don't. But if you can't do it, it doesn't mean you're a bad person, because your parents didn't give you your rights and a good start to life from the beginning. So if they haven't fulfilled their part of the deal, then unfortunately they will reap what they sow. Okay, they're not going to find children who will willingly be there for them. I'm speaking about the majority of people who will happily give their parents all their due rights and take care of them when they're elderly, after everything that they have put their children through. So this is the danger of being a malignant parent. You will be the one who suffers the most at the end, because it's the empath children you're going to need, and not your narcissistic ones who you always put on a pedestal. So you don't owe your parents their full rights of being taken care of if they neglected you from childhood all the way to adulthood. Okay, especially if, he is a father who took off and completely abandoned you from childhood and never asked about you, never took care of you, never provided for you, you don't owe this person anything. And you don't owe the people who abused you from the beginning until the very end anything, because you didn't receive your rights. You are a complete mess of a person because of how traumatized you have become from living with your parents and being raised by them in a very strange and unacceptable way. I know people who have autoimmune diseases and cancer from living with their parents who are so abusive and so stressful to be around. And if we go back to the example of the mother who needs her son around, the one who she abused and treated so badly growing up, she can pay people to do so much for her and look after her, but the one thing she is unable to pay someone to do is be her mahram, because a mahram is a blood relative. You can't pay someone to stand in as your mahram. So it's in these cases when someone's love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala causes them to step up for their narcissistic parent. Okay, it doesn't mean you have to forgive them if they haven't asked you for forgiveness or shown you any remorse for what they did. But this act of service can be the reason you enter Jannah. The Prophet ﷺ said, لا يدخل الجنة قاطع رحم. The one who severes their family ties will not enter paradise. So it's critical that you maintain ties of kinship for this reason. It doesn't state that you will not enter paradise if you do not, honor the abuser. It doesn't state that Jannah lies at the feet of oppressive, abusive, tyrannical, malignant Muslim mothers. No, it doesn't say any of that. The emphasis is placed on qati'u rahim because if a father severes his ties with his children and they need him in the future to get married or to travel far or to have an operation or for funeral reasons, if they don't find him because he's cut ties with them and he passes away, the door of Jannah will be closed for him because he's left behind so many difficulties. And he's created obstacles in the lives of his relatives who needed him, and he wasn't there for them. And the same applies to brothers who cut off their sisters. So if the father passes away, they're the next in line to be mahrams. So if the sisters don't have any way of contacting their brothers because their brothers don't care and they move to the other side of the world, then who do they have to rely on? Maybe nobody. So this hadith actually applies more to men than women because الرجال قوامون على النساء. It's the men who are meant to maintain the family ties to ensure their women always have access to mahrams. And when women have access to the qawwams in their families, they'll be protected, taken care of and provided for. You see? So it makes more sense that the severing of family ties is more an issue when men do it to women than when women do it to men. Because in these cases, more often than not, it's the men who are the abusers. And even if they don't have a good relationship with the women in their families, they still have an obligation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be al-qawwamun in their families. Especially when it comes to the times when a mahram is needed. Okay, I hope I've explained that properly and clearly to you, for you to understand why it's not such a straightforward matter. Someone asked if it's okay to block their father if they keep receiving aggressive text messages from him. And I would say in this situation that you may need to do this temporarily until you find a better solution. So if you're still in contact with the rest of the family, then perhaps they can be the middle people, right, between you and your father to exchange messages and what you need from him and what he needs from you, like I mentioned earlier, which is something a mufti might suggest to someone who is unable to maintain civil communication between them. Now, moving on to the next question, someone asked, my mother is very cold and emotionally unavailable. She has the ability to lash out at me physically too, even though I am now a 29-year-old woman. I can't stand her and wish to be away from her, but I feel guilty because she is a single parent in this country and has no one. What do I do? So, to answer this question, we need to go back to the 4 categories of parents. So we've already spoken about the first category of parents, who are the malignant narcissists and abusers. The second category includes the parents who are abusive to their children during their childhood, but they reformed and got better during their adulthood. And the third category of parents includes those who were great with their children during their childhood, so there wasn't any abuse, but later on in life, during their adulthood, the parents became very difficult and abusive as a result of failed expectations. And of course, the fourth category includes the parents who didn't abuse their children in their childhood, during their teenage years, or during their adulthood. So it's important to know that all the scholars agreed that it is completely forbidden to sever ties with any parents in these 3 categories especially. There is no dispute about this at all, because unlike the malignant narcissists in category 1, the parents in categories 2 and 3 never abused their children with intent, and if they did, they felt bad about it, they felt remorse, and they changed their ways later, which offers space for reconciliation and the amendment of relationships. However, in category 1, the abuse is intentional, and a mufti or a judge need to intervene in order to see where the problems lie and how to safely deal with the situation. So in categories 2 and 3, there are no safety concerns. Okay, these are regular issues that the majority of people might have in their families, and if they can't be resolved in the family, then a professional counsellor or a wise mediator needs to get involved to help resolve the problems. So dealing with an emotionally unavailable mother especially is something a lot of people experience. And I'll tell you now, there isn't anyone on this planet who doesn't wish they had or have a loving, nurturing, warm, caring, sweet mother. Right? No one wants to deal with a mother who is emotionally unavailable. She's cold, she's harsh, she's strict, she's snappy, very military, and critical and judgmental, and she's not affectionate either. She doesn't like it when you're affectionate with her or when you expect affection from her. So it's very difficult to deal with this type of mother, and it's these parents who often fuel a deep need in their children to seek affection and love elsewhere. So if you have a mother like this, more often than not, you're going to attract a man or a woman who is also emotionally unavailable, because you attract what you're used to. So you might attract a man who's just like your mother, or you'll attract a woman who's just like your mother. And this is more often the case as well when your mother is a single mother. And if she gets particularly frustrated or angry on some days, she may lash out physically. However, all of this is not done with intent. This is all a result of her circumstances. Okay, so she may have been raised by a mother who was just the same, very harsh, or a father who was very harsh. So she's got childhood trauma, and she may have never experienced love from your father. Right? Her husband wouldn't have given her what she needed. She never got that love and romance and affection from him. And then she may have been abandoned by him for another woman. She may have been abandoned completely and left to fend for herself as a single mother, which made her frustrated, especially if she was dependent on him. Or she may have been married to a man-child who let her live in her masculine energy all the time. So she got frustrated at having to be the man. He acted like the woman and she wore the pants in the house because he wasn't reliable. He was always in and out of jobs. She had to maintain a job. She had to provide for you. She had to work around the clock and cook and clean and get everything done, she got burnt out. So mothers in their masculine energy are often very emotionally unavailable. They don't have time to nurture their children. They don't have time to step into their feminine energy because they don't feel safe to do so, because the man whom they're with is very unreliable. He is causing her to live under a lot of stress because he's always acting like he's one of her teenage sons. So all of this can cause a mother to be unavailable emotionally for her children. She can't nurture and love them in a way that a mother should. So it causes her to be like this and to lash out. But you know, deep down you know, that it's because of her circumstances. It's because of the way she grew up, and it's because she never really experienced that love in her life. So in these cases, scholars say to be patient. If you're patient with your mother, especially your mother, when her circumstances are difficult and she's had to raise children herself and go through that burnout and go through that stress, then it's better for you to make excuses for her. Okay, it's just your trial and your hardship in life to have a mother who unfortunately is in this situation. So I would help her out as much as you can. I would be patient. If she is snappy and unbearable to deal with, and calling her isn't pleasant and visiting her isn't pleasant, then learn how to place the correct boundaries that are Islamic and acceptable, and also create enough distance to maintain respect and to maintain the love between you and your mother, because you know she loves you. You know she's gone out of her way to look after you and do the best she can for you. But in the process, she lost herself. She lost her feminine energy. Okay? So you might need some help with this from a mediator or a counsellor. But do get it, because it can be very rewarding when you learn how to deal with a mother who is like this. And the same goes for emotionally unavailable fathers. You might have a father who's a great provider, but emotionally he's switched off. And again, that comes as a result of his childhood and upbringing and not feeling love from your mother, or maybe heartbreak that he experienced before that caused him to switch off. There are reasons for it, but as long as they're not abusing you, then there is a chance for patience to be exercised in these situations. And you can help yourselves and your parents in these situations by putting the correct boundaries in place and maintaining healthy distance so that, you don't end up engaging in a toxic relationship with them. So the kind of abuse I'm speaking about that they put you through in childhood in category 2 is this type of abuse, right? It's non-intentional. They might have neglected you, snapped at you, got angry at you, maybe smacked you here and there. They may have been verbally abusive, but it's out of their own issues. It's not because you were the problem. The abuse came as a result of their own mental health issues. Okay? So unfortunately, a lot of people took it personally and they believed that it was directed right at them because they were the problem. No. Maybe the mother was afflicted by black magic at the time. Maybe she was schizophrenic. Maybe she was bipolar. Maybe she was suffering from severe depression. Maybe she was suffering from domestic violence at the hands of your father. There are factors that play into the reasons why a parent can be abusive and neglectful. And like I said, it's not always intentional. And this is where Islam requests you to be merciful when it comes to considering your parents' circumstances before you make a judgment on them. Especially if you know they tried their best in other areas of life. So for example, if your father was a great provider, if he was a lot of fun, you can make some excuses for his emotional unavailability. If your mother cared about you and your health and she always cooked for you, she always made sure your clothes were clean, she always made sure you did your homework, she always made sure that you went to your Quran classes and you got the gifts you wanted for Eid, and she nursed you when you were sick and she read you bedtime stories, all of those things, if your parents did them but there was abuse and gaslighting and manipulation, and even if it's religious manipulation in between, right, wedged in between all of that, try and focus more on the good times. Try and focus more on the good things they did. Even though in this category, the bad times would have been more than the good times. Okay, let's say the good times were 40%, 30 to 40%, and the bad times were 60 to 70%. But as your parents get older and they realise that they really messed up as parents and they want to do better and they feel bad, maybe they've heard Islamic lectures, maybe, they really regret the way things were back then because of their own circumstances and their own illness and mental health, and they decide to get better when they're older in your adulthood, give them that chance. Okay, focus on the good so you can get past the bad and you can forgive them and move on. Now, some of these parents will have so much pride and they might not ask you for forgiveness. They might not say sorry, but with their actions, they will show you that they want to make it up to you and that they are sorry. But they will have moments here and there where they will lash out and they will be difficult. And that's only because you have not placed the correct boundaries and distance to maintain a healthy relationship. Okay? So some of these parents might want to see you every day and they might want to call you every day. But when they do, they're difficult. And when they're angry, they lash out and they get rude and offensive and all of that. It's up to you to create boundaries and distance so that they know that they can't overstep certain boundaries with you in order to have a good relationship, because they already have to make it up to you as a result of the childhood they put you through. So when you're not placing the right boundaries in place and distance, then you're enabling them to get worse. You're enabling them to lash out. You're enabling them to be disrespectful and slip into their old habits and old ways. You put an end to it by respectfully communicating that you don't like this, so you're not going to accept it, and that you love them and you want a relationship with them, but you can't if they keep dealing with you in that way. And if you live with them, then it's best for you to, go out and see people and do fun things and have hobbies and activities that you do, so that you're not always in each other's faces and you're not at risk of always arguing and bickering and falling out. Because the majority of these fallouts will be over petty, silly things. One of the questions I received was from a brother who said that his wife and his mother don't get on, and for that reason he's decided to not visit his mother at all because she didn't approve his choice of wife. So here he's in the wrong, because he doesn't have to bring his wife to visit his mother. He can make time for her, when he's passing by, or he can, schedule a time where he can sit with his mum for half an hour or an hour. He can have tea and cake with her and, catch up on things, help her with things around the house, get her some shopping, whatever it is that she needs. He can do that for her without the wife being present. And that way, he can prevent arguments and problems from happening, and he doesn't neglect his mother and her needs. So he can be diplomatic by separating the two and accepting that his mum just doesn't like her. And he can work on this later by finding ways, using his own intelligence, using his own brain, as to how he can bring them together and allow them to be friends. So it's important sometimes to see from a parent's perspective why they don't like someone, especially when you know that they don't intend any harm for you. Maybe they think that this person is too controlling, or they've noticed some things here and there that they don't like in this person. So hear them out instead of just getting angry because they have their reservations about someone you've chosen, and try and be as compassionate and understanding as you can when considering the circumstances of this mother or this father who is emotionally unavailable, and they're still suffering from, bad habits and traumas and their own issues. So this sister said, who asked the question, she said that her mother is alone in this country and she's a single mother. So you can imagine how difficult that must be. to raise children alone and be abandoned in a country where you don't have your family around you, and you're still suffering greatly from a divorce. And you may be still recovering from the shame of that, because where you come from, divorce is seen as something really bad and something to be embarrassed about because it's still a taboo subject. So consider all of this and remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses our parents for us, and these parents will shape our life mission. Okay? So be patient, have empathy, and inshallah it will go a long way for you in this life and the next. Who are in category 3. And these parents did give them a good childhood. Okay, when I say that, I mean they did everything in their power, in their control, in their ability, and within their means to provide the best of everything for you. So, for example, they would have taken you to good schools. They would have made sure you had a good Islamic upbringing if they were religious. They would have made sure you had a comfortable lifestyle, that you had the opportunities that other children had when it came to activities, hobbies, social life, and so on. Okay, they looked after you when you were sick. They didn't abuse you. They did everything they could, right? They always made sure that you got your homework done, you had good grades at school so that you could go to good colleges and universities, so that you could have good careers. They cared about all of that. And they would have cared about your moral upbringing as well. So they would have made sure that you're polite with people, you're kind, you're not greedy, you share your toys, and you're respectful to elders, and you don't bully people at school. Okay, they would have done as much as they could to make sure that you turn out to be a decent human being. Now, I'm not saying there isn't any discipline here. Of course there is. Right? These parents would have disciplined you in various ways, and some people may have perceived that to be toxic. It's only toxic when the parents intentionally abuse you and discipline you for no reason whatsoever. However, when they're giving you the best upbringing and they discipline you, it's not toxicity, unless they are, crossing red lines when it comes to discipline. And if they do, again, it's not out of intent for these types of parents. It's mainly because they think it's normal to smack their children when they're 4 and 5 and scream at them, and because they were used to that too in their own upbringing. And you'll also find a lot of parents in this category who didn't focus too much on the emotional needs of a child. So they cared more about their child being comfortable and going to good schools and having a good education rather than their emotional needs, because one or both parents are emotionally unavailable, or they don't have time to focus as well on the emotional needs of children because they're both working parents. Okay, they both work full time, they come home, and all they have time for is to sort out the dinner of the child and their homework and those things before they go to bed. So in these cases as well, you'll find that children can be raised by nannies. If the parents come from, a wealthy background or they're well off, they will hire nannies and send their kids to daycare and all of that so that they can work to provide the best lifestyle possible for these children. So these parents do fall under the category of being good parents. However, because of the absence of emotional investment in these children, many children can grow up to be adults who are emotionally unavailable, and they may not be comfortable with affection. They might not be comfortable with speaking about their emotions because they weren't used to doing that in their household. However, they would have done very well in their careers, so they would have turned out to be doctors, lawyers, barristers, solicitors, and so on. And they may have even turned out to be very good businessmen and women, like their parents are, because of their involvement in the family business. So they learnt a lot from a young age. However, you'll find that the fathers who are successful and they work a lot and travel a lot, they would have instilled the belief in their sons that you can't cry. It's not good for boys to cry. You'll be like a girl if you cry. You can't be weak. You've got to do this and you've got to do that. So boys grow up not being able to express themselves, and women grow up being very used to emotionally unavailable men. Okay, so it becomes the norm for them to be around men like this, and that's why they attract them when they're older. You find lots of very successful women. They're boss babes, CEOs, business owners, everything, and they have very emotionally unavailable husbands. It's because their fathers are like this and their brothers are like this. And a lot of people who came from wealthy homes often found that they didn't get a sufficient Islamic upbringing, and if they did, it wasn't a good one. So the understanding of Islam was quite distorted because it was mixed too much with culture. So for example, if a woman was taught to cover her hair, it was mainly out of respect for elders rather than it being an Islamic obligation, and so on. So parents who focused a lot on education so that their children could have great careers often lacked in the Islamic side of things. However, those who came from more religious backgrounds could have also had parents in category 3 who did everything in their power, control, ability and financial means to give them the best upbringing they could. Okay, they might have sent them to private Islamic schools, for example. They might have, taken their children to activities. They would have done fun things with them. They would have cared about their homework, about their health, about everything. But they would have also lacked in the children's emotional needs because they wouldn't have been used to that in their own upbringing. Maybe they are emotionally unavailable as well. They're not used to expressing their emotions. They're quite maybe rigid and cold and all of that, okay? Now, I'm not saying this is always the case. I'm saying sometimes, even if it's just the one parent who's emotionally unavailable, if it's the mother, the children are going to suffer even if they have a very good Islamic upbringing, because their nervous system is not regulated by the emotions of the mother, who is available to talk to them and cuddle them and show them affection and love and encourage them to express themselves in a good way and a respectful way whenever something is upsetting them, or if they're angry about something, or if they are complaining about something that they feel is unfair. And usually when children have a strict Islamic upbringing, they're not allowed to stand up for themselves, they're not allowed to answer back, they're not allowed to speak their mind and challenge their parents. They're immediately shut down. It's haram to argue with your parents. Your parents are going to be angry with you. You're going to go to hell if you keep, arguing. But children, a lot of children will argue because they're not being listened to. Okay, they will get defiant and rebellious and disrespectful over time because no one is listening to them. Every time they try to say something and express themselves, they're shut down with Islamic justifications that are not correct. Okay, yes, you shouldn't answer back to your parents and you shouldn't argue with your parents, but the parents have to give their children a space to communicate effectively and in a healthy way where they're not going to fear being punished for saying what's on their mind. Okay, this is the only way you can establish harmony and peace in the home. Otherwise, you're just going to build up so much resentment towards each other because both your needs are not being met. So the parents want to be respected and the children want to be loved and listened to. So this can cause a lot of children later in life as adults to rebel against Islam, against their parents' way of life and way of doing things and their way of parenting. And this is what can turn parents toxic later in adulthood. So they would have been fine for the most part. They're not abusing you intentionally. But in adulthood, that's when a lot of people rebel because it's their chance to get out of the home. Now they're old enough to get married, or they're old enough to move away for university or to move house. This is when they'll do it. It's almost like they're running away from what was forced on them sometimes, or what they were pressured into, because they never had the space to express themselves and be themselves. And this also applies to those who are raised in a wealthy home, or a home in which the parents are very highly educated. So instead of being a professor or a lawyer or an engineer or a barrister. They wanted to be vets. They wanted to be nurses and artists. But their parents didn't approve of this because they're thinking, well, all that hard work went to waste. All that money that we spent on your education and activities and hobbies and traveling and holidays and everything that we did for you went to waste because you didn't turn out the way we wanted you to. So some parents here can get toxic because of that, because of failed expectations. So even when it comes to religious parents, they might have had this expectation that you grow up to be a mufti or a hafiz or an imam or a Quran teacher or a professor in Islamic studies or something. And if that doesn't happen, unfortunately, these parents will feel as though they've failed. Okay, they will go through life believing that they failed as parents, and they'll get depressed, and that depression will be projected onto you. Okay? And they will start to blame themselves for everything they did for you because it backfired on them. For example, their son says, I want to marry a woman and she doesn't wear hijab. This is a disaster for religious parents who raised you to be the same way they are and to marry from their community and to live life like they do. So if you decide to marry a woman who doesn't cover, you're at risk of them giving you the silent treatment. They might even disown you. They might say, that's it. We don't want anything to do with you. Don't visit us. We don't visit you. You marry who you want, but it ends here for us. And we're not happy. We're going to die being very unhappy. This is where the issues start in adulthood, with parents who believe they did the best they could, but have to deal with failed expectations. Sometimes it's the woman who disappoints them, the daughter, when she marries a man who's not as practicing as they would have liked him to be. But it's only because she's running away from her upbringing. She's running away from everything she knows about Islam because it was forced on her, or she was pressured into it, and she's like, I'm not going through that again. And it was enough that I had very strict Muslim parents. I don't want a strict Muslim husband either, who's going to force me to wear a niqab, and he's going to force me to, stay in the home. I'm not allowed to go out with friends. I'm not allowed to do this. I'm not allowed to do that, because that's what she was used to when she was raised by her parents. So a lot of children, they want to free themselves from, the clutches of their parents when they can. And this is what causes many to fall out with their parents in adulthood. And then these people call their parents toxic for the way that they react. And remember, you'll also get people who want to deviate completely from the way their parents raised them. So for example, a man might even say, Dad, I'm gay and I want to live my life as a Muslim gay man. And his father is distraught about this. Even if his father is not very religious, it goes against the deen, it goes against so many social principles, and he's distraught. He's absolutely devastated that his son would choose this life path. So he will say to him, that's it, I disown you. I don't want anything to do with you. I don't want anything to do with your future, with your life. Just live your life far away from me and don't consider me your father anymore. In this situation, someone might see their father as being extremely toxic. And a daughter might say to her family that she doesn't want to be Muslim anymore, or she wants to marry a non-Muslim, or they don't want to continue their studies at university. They want to drop out and they want to become a mechanic or something like that. So the reaction to these decisions that the children have made can be abusive, and it can cause a family to completely fall apart. Okay, because of the shame, because of the anger, the sheer disappointment of it all. And that's why so many people don't speak to their parents for a very long time. They sever ties and go on to live completely separate lives, and their parents are heartbroken. That's why these kind of cases have to go to the mufti, because sometimes, like I said, people will say that their parents are extremely toxic, but if you don't look at the reasons why they have reacted in a certain way, you're not going to get the full picture. Okay, so it will be understandable why parents will be distraught if their child decides to become an atheist after they've spent so many years teaching them about Islam, but because they didn't really understand where they had failed, like from the emotional side of things, they will never understand why their child took that life path. So they react in a toxic way, or they'll react in a way that causes a lot of emotional damage to the children, because they might say things, like I said, like, I disown you, I don't want anything to do with you. So children feel rejected and not accepted because they have the belief that parents should have unconditional love for them until their old age, that they should always accept what their children want to do. That's not always the case. This is wishful thinking. So if a case like this went to the Mufti, he will tell the children that they're in the wrong, if we're talking about it from an Islamic perspective, right? And this is why we have so many closet atheists in our communities, and why we have so many closet gays and lesbians, because they all fear the reaction of their parents towards the news and the decisions that they've made for their lives. So they live double lives so that they don't rock the boat at home, and so that they don't have to sever ties with their parents and be shamed in public and in their community. So it's a serious problem, because there are more and more closet gays, lesbians and atheists in our societies more than ever. And the problem with this lies in the fact that so many people are marrying them without knowing that they're secretly gay or secretly lesbian. So many people are going into these marriages thinking that this person is straight, but their mind is elsewhere during the whole marriage. It's unfair. It's seriously a huge problem right now. So other people's lives are being ruined in the process because they have to stay closet. And at the same time, it goes against the principles of Islam. And at the same time as that, on top of all of this, they're going to lose their family if they come out about it. So I think we need to speak more about this subject, because marrying someone who isn't who you think they are can have disastrous consequences, as we've seen. I have a lot of people coming to me telling me that they found out their wife is actually lesbian and that's why she's got no interest in them, or that the husband is closet gay, and it's all because they can't tell their families because of the repercussions of it. So these people avoid going to muftis to resolve the issues, because they know if they went to a mufti, the mufti will side with the parents. Islam will come first in every ruling. They're not going to look at what's acceptable now in the 21st century in society and all of that. They're going to look at what's haram and halal, and based on that, they will see who's right or wrong. Now, marrying someone who's closet atheist has caused many issues as well. So, for example, someone might marry a man or a woman from a very religious family thinking that, okay, they're going to be very religious as well because of the environment they were brought up in and the education they had. However, they will be shocked to find out later after marriage that this person isn't religious at all. They hardly pray. They don't care about religion. They have a resentment towards religion. But on the outside, he's an imam or she's a Quran teacher or whatnot, because she's got to keep up appearances for the sake of her family. So definitely a subject that we have to dive into in more detail later, inshallah. But I'm just giving you examples of what can happen to make parents turn abusive towards their children later in life. However, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say to us about this? He says in Surah Al-Isra, verse 24, and I've already quoted this one in my previous podcast. He says, وَاخْفِضْ لَهُمَا جَنَاحُ الذُّلِّ مِنَ الرَّحْمَةِ وَقُلْ رَبِّ إِرْحَمَهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِ صَغِيرًا. And lower to your parents the wings of humbleness and humility out of mercy, and pray, my Lord, be merciful to them as they raised me well when I was young. So this is a call for compassion from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala towards your parents. And he emphasizes on the word saghira, at the end. Saghira means childhood, right? If they did the best they could to raise you when you were young, they gave you the best of everything they could offer, and there wasn't any intentional abuse. They raised you in the way they thought best, even if, they brought in some baggage from their own traumas and childhood, thinking that it was normal. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks you here and reminds you to take into consideration the childhood they gave you, right? The way they protected you, the way they loved you, the way they always had your best interests at heart. Even if things got toxic in adulthood, which in many cases they do, remember this and have compassion and try to resolve your issues, because here it is haram to sever ties and not honor your parents. There's an order for you to be humble and kind to them because they gave you a good childhood. Okay? So it becomes an obligation upon you to bear this in mind when you have your issues as adults because of their failed expectations and disappointments. And yes, they might be control freaks and they want to dictate and direct every part of your life. There has to be resolution here via a mediator. Okay, so if they are being too controlling, a third party can tell them that. You can have it resolved with family counselling and so on. But don't hate them and resent them and brand them as being toxic for the way they react. You have to take into account their principles and their beliefs and their iman and their culture and everything that they were raised with too. And you have to ask yourselves, why is it that they really can't accept the way that I am or the life path I've chosen for myself? There has to be compassion and use of intelligence here. Because too many people are committing a major sin by cutting off their parents because they don't want to see their side of it. It's a narcissistic trait that I don't care how my parents feel, this is what I want to do. This is against Islam. Okay, so you've got to see it from both sides. Sometimes it is the fault of the children and sometimes it's the fault of the adults. But if you have parents in categories 2 and 3, you need to do your utmost best to resolve your issues with them so that you can have barakah in your lives. And I know it's hard. I know a lot of people are thinking, oh my God, my parents, if you saw my parents, you'd understand how difficult they are. I get it. I really do. But this is your challenge in life. It's a hardship. Not everyone gets the type of parents who are in category 4. The ones who are just great from childhood all the way to adulthood. That's a rizq. And it's one of the greatest rizqs you can ever have. So if you have it, I really hope you're grateful for it. And I hope you show gratitude to your parents for it. And gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because when you have such a solid foundation from the beginning, the rest of your life can be a lot smoother than those who didn't have a good start in life because they had toxic parents. You need to be grateful and overlook their faults, overlook their mistakes. Because to be a parent in category 4, whether you're the parent or you have parents like that, it's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a big one. And it's very easy to resent your parents for being too strict when you were young. Maybe they were a bit harsh. Maybe they stopped you from doing many things that other kids used to do. And it made you hate them and it made you feel that you were deprived and it's so unfair. But there are many people who look back on that and they say, Alhamdulillah, my parents were like that. Alhamdulillah, they protected me the way they did. Alhamdulillah, they stopped me from doing X, Y, Z and hanging around with those friends. And putting a hijab on me when I was young, because if they didn't, I probably wouldn't have ever worn it, and so on. My father was super strict when I was growing up. He was military with me, especially as I was the first daughter, but boys stayed away from me. And I didn't have the issues that other girls had in my school because of how strict my dad was, how protective he was. Boys were terrified of my dad. They would all disperse. As soon as they see my dad at the school gate, everyone runs away. He was that scary. I remember one Friday, I received a Valentine's card from a boy in my class. His name was Mark, I remember that. I must have been 11 at the time, and my dad found it in my school bag and he went ballistic. And he said to me, look, if you want to go back to school on Monday morning, you're going with a full hijab on. Or you stay at home and I homeschool you. I was like, there is no way in hell I'm staying at home to be homeschooled by my military dad. I'll put a hijab on and I'll go to school. Because at the time he was running his own business from home. And I just thought, no. I'm going to school. I'll go to school with a niqab on if I have to. There is no way I am staying at home. And I went to school on that Monday morning with a hijab on. I got teased for a couple of weeks, but then everyone got over it. And what it did was it set the stage for me to be different from everyone else. So I didn't grow up with Christian values or English values. I grew up with Muslim ones because everyone could see I was different. And even though I hated my dad for it when I was younger, looking back now, it saved me. It really protected me growing up, especially because all my friends at the time were not Muslim. So wearing the hijab from a young age stopped me from doing so many things that other people were doing my age. And when I look back on that, I'm grateful to my dad. Even though he didn't go about it in the right way, he was very harsh, he was very strict. He didn't do it in a loving way at all, but I'm grateful that he did it when I was that age. And there are good childhood memories, so when I look back, I don't feel that resentment. I feel I have to find that gratitude for him and the good side of him and the good he did for me to forgive and get over everything else. The same way many of you who, mashallah, have become doctors, lawyers, engineers, surgeons, need to be grateful for your parents who pushed you in your education, even if they were harsh on you, doing your homework and getting good grades. You're earning like 100k now a year, 150k a year, even more than that. You've got your own homes, alhamdulillah. You've managed to do so much for yourselves because your parents pushed you to get the career you have today. So even though they didn't go about it in the right way when you were kids, it's always important to find that gratitude, and that gratitude helps you to heal and move on and get past a lot of things that happened that aren't in your control to change, right? What happened in the past, but what you have control over is how you look at it. Okay, like the compassion, the understanding that you can find for your parents back then when you look at your situation today. If it wasn't for my parents, I wouldn't be Muslim, I wouldn't be a doctor, I wouldn't be, whatever. So it's important to do that to heal. Islam teaches us to be just when we assess our situations. Okay, it's always easy to play victim sometimes, or it's always easy to look at the negative side of the situation rather than the positive, especially if the negative is more than the positive. But look at what shaped you to be who you are today. Traumas aside, right? Depression aside, all of that aside, look at the positive. I mean, another example I can give you from my life was my dad driving us every Saturday to attend Islamic school. So my mum would teach us the foundations of Islam and Quran and Arabic, and my father would drive us to the Islamic school so that we could socialize with Arabs, especially Saudis, because we were quite isolated from everyone. So this was our chance in the week to see people who were from the same background. So these are things I remember because they shaped who I am today. My love for the Arabic language came from that. And I was able to hold on to my Saudi culture because of the fact I was also able to socialize with Saudis. So it didn't get lost by me growing up in a very English area. And of course, my parents would take us all the time to Saudi to go and see our uncles, our aunties and everyone. So these are things I will always be grateful for, because always remember that people who have parents in category 1 don't get that. They don't get that. They have parents who don't care about their education. They have parents who don't care about, whether or not they learn Quran and Islam. They don't care who they socialize with. They don't care what their children get up to, what they're watching, what they're doing, because mum is so busy shopping or, doing what she wants to do. The dad is all over the place. He's got his own issues. He could be an addict. He could be, too malignant to care about anyone. So always be grateful for the good times and the good things that your parents left you with, and try find the good so you can move on. And when you find the good, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will place blessings in your healing journey and make it easier for you, inshallah. So the next question I received is this. My narc mother has launched a smear campaign against me and spread slander about me. Family members and people in the community believe her, and it's harming my life and is causing my siblings to treat me so badly. She is causing fitna to ruin our relationship. What shall I do? So in this situation, you need a mufti or a mediator who is highly reputable in the community, who has good Islamic knowledge to help resolve the issues, because slander is involved, and slander in Islam, especially the slander of a woman, is punishable. And if you don't have these people, if you don't have access to them, then you need to distance yourself until the situation calms down and you're able to get a mediator or a family counsellor on board to help stop the abuse and slander, okay? So I would recommend that you go stay with a friend, a good sibling, uncle, auntie. Just go and stay somewhere else, because it's hard enough dealing with a narc mother who's attacking you, let alone all your siblings as well. People can be led to suicidal thoughts. They can be led to a lot of anxiety, depression, and despair, loss of iman. So here you have to put your iman and your mental health first. So distance yourself temporarily until the issues get solved, inshallah, with third-party involvement, because if you don't, it will definitely get worse. Your presence will make it so much worse, and you'll feel overwhelmed, and you might lose yourself in the process. Remember, this is a satanic mission to destroy the family unit, okay? When you stand up for yourself and when you stand up for justice, what's going to happen is you're going to fuel the anger in narcissists, and they don't care if their abuse causes you long-term emotional and psychological damage. They're not thinking about that. They just hate it when you're strong enough to stand up for yourself and answer back and tell them that what they're doing is toxic and wrong, especially when you tell them it's haram and you give them evidence in Islam that what they're doing is haram and punishable. That's why you need other people's involvement, okay? Even if you can't find a mufti or a mediator, get the family on board, okay? Get a good uncle or a good auntie on board to sit, even if it's your grandparents, let them sit with your parents and siblings and sort out the situation. So, the satanic mission is always to cause fitna in the family. And when they destroy the family and make the siblings hate each other and dramas and chaos and a toxic environment is created, they win. Don't let them win. Remove yourself from the situation, move away for a bit, create that distance, and then inshallah things will resolve themselves in their own time. Narcissists want people to sever ties with each other. And sometimes they just need a very strong reminder that what they're doing is going to seriously affect their akhirah. Not that the majority of narcs care about that either, but when it comes from someone else who is known in the community, they might feel shame because they want to look good in front of other people, right? So when someone comes along to tell them this, then they might fix up, it might help. They always want to look good in front of other people, and that probably will be your best bet in regards to finding a solution if they have no interest in speaking to a counsellor. Okay, maybe get someone from the mosque committee or someone they really highly respect, to speak to them and inshallah help it stop. Someone else asked a similar question in the comment section, and they said, my query is that out of the 4 types of parents, a parent of mine was a child narc and they got a little better now that I've grown up. But there is still a lot of control, emotional invalidation and abuse, and sometimes they say things which get me so hurt and angry. Anything to get under my skin, basically. My query is that it kind of subconsciously affects me what they say. It affects my decisions and instills an unnecessary fear in me and hurts me terribly. It's like their qareen loves to play with my insecurities and put the entire blame of anything not going right in my life because I did such and such to them, and how none of my acts of worship matter. What do I do? So again here, it's very important for you to place the right boundaries and enough distance between you and them so that you can have a healthy relationship. Because when you're in each other's faces all the time, this is going to happen. You're going to get even more trauma bonded to your parents, and if you are someone who fears Allah, they're going to use religion against you. Right? They will only use this with the children who are religiously inclined because it only works on them. So when they say to you, you failed your exams, or you didn't get that marriage proposal that you wanted, or you didn't get that job you wanted because of what you did to me, because I'm not happy with you. Parents don't have a right to say this because your rizq is in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's hands and not theirs. Yes, it's true, if you are bad to your parents, the doors of rizq will close on you, but when you know you're not oppressing them and you're not deliberately abusing them, but they're the ones who are creating problems and using the God card to manipulate you and get their way with everything by blaming you for everything, then don't worry about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cursing you and not accepting your acts of worship. They don't have a right to say whether or not your acts of worship are being accepted and whether you're going to hell or not, as if they are the gatekeepers of that. Yes, there is a hadith that says that Jannah lies under the feet of your mother. However, not narcissistic mothers. Jannah does not lie under the feet of oppressive people and people who use the God card and drag Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name into their bad behavior to justify their abuse and manipulation. That's not how it works. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala places Jannah under the feet of mothers who did their job to the best of their ability without intending to use and manipulate Islam to their advantage and abuse their children intentionally. So they're very quick to say that none of your prayers will be accepted, none of your fasting will be accepted, because they are upset with you. However, they don't make it easy either to be pleased. Okay, so they will make it hard for you to please them. They will constantly dangle the carrot and move the goalpost, so nothing is ever good enough, so that they can always use the manipulation card of you never pleasing them. This happens a lot. Okay, so many parents do this. They always move the goalpost. So you do everything that they want, but by moving the goalpost, there's still something that you haven't done that they can be upset about, and then they'll manipulate you by saying, I'm not happy. And if I die unhappy, then you're not going to Jannah. It's as simple as that. And nothing good is going to happen in your life. This is anti-Islamic behavior. They will be accountable for this with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So instead of letting it affect you and you falling for it, distance yourself from your parents until they see that there's a chance they could lose you if they do not respect you and respect the child that you are. Okay, again, when I say child, I mean adult as well, because they should be grateful that they have a God-fearing child who cares about them, who cares about their deen, who cares about making them happy, right? You will do your best to achieve so many things in life to make them proud, But they're not looking at that. They're always looking at what you're not doing for them. And they're always creating problems so that you work harder to please them. And what this is going to do is it's going to cause you to develop a deep resentment and sometimes hate for them if you do not place the right boundaries to stop enabling this behavior from continuing. So you help your parents by placing boundaries. Otherwise, you will always hear constant cursing, constant guilt trip, constant criticism and judgments, and they might even shame you for past mistakes. They might always bring them up. Oh, do you remember that when you were 15, you did this, this, this? Don't think that you're so pious. Don't think that you're so religious. Do you remember what you did when you were 20? Do you remember what you did when you were 18? They don't let it go, and this is a serious problem. Because again, it can fuel hate. This is what the shaitan wants. So that you make the decision to sever ties with your parents. And your mother might even say to you, I know a lot of people have had this one, I carried you for 9 months and I gave birth to you and I breastfed you, so you owe me everything. You owe me your whole life and your future, and I have to dictate everything you do because I was pregnant with you for 9 months. And you're ungrateful if you do not do things for me because of that. So when they know that they can't use their great parenting to justify why you should do so much good for them because they abused you so much as a child, they will use the pregnancy card, to guilt trip you. And like I said, it doesn't matter what you do for them. You could become a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer. You could do everything to make them proud, but it's not good enough. They will use the pregnancy card to make you feel terrible about yourself and to make you feel like a failure as a daughter or as a son. And sometimes you might even feel like your parent hates you. Like there's genuine hate that comes from them towards you. And a lot of this can unfortunately come from envy and jealousy. So if they see that you've grown up to be the person they always wish that they could be themselves, you might feel hate. If you grow up to be someone who is better than them in their eyes, you might feel hate. If you grow up to marry someone and have a better life than they did, you might feel hate from your own parents. And again, these are parents in category 1, The ones who don't have that unconditional love for their children. They're in competition with their children. Many, many parents compete with their children. And they hate it. They hate it when they see that you're braver, smarter, more religious, more empathic than them. You will feel a hate, unfortunately. And if you feel it, more often than not, it's real. Because energy doesn't lie. So just read your adhkar, Keep on top of your adhkar. Make dua for your parents in this situation. And inshallah, this will resolve itself with time. But boundaries and distance, It's the best thing you can do. And only you know how much distance you need to create so that there's respect in the relationship. So, for example, if you are used to visiting your mother every day, maybe go once every other day. If it's still very bad, once every 2 days, and so on, until you get to a schedule that's good for both of you, where respect, love, and, just that harmony is maintained, peace is maintained. It's enough space for you to miss each other. And if you live with each other, then spend more time out of the home, doing things, work on yourself, and inshallah things will get better. Now the next question is this. Our father cut ties with us and moved away years ago. Do we need to keep looking for him? So this is a really difficult one, because having a parent who severs ties with you is a different level of pain, especially when that parent is the father. So I'm thinking maybe I'll do another podcast about this subject because it's quite a deep subject, but I'll touch upon it now quickly. If a parent has severed ties with you, it now becomes their responsibility. It's their major sin to carry because they are responsible for their children. Even if they have adult children who are women, then they will carry the responsibility for them too, because daughters remain under the care of their fathers until they get married. Okay? So if you have no father around at all to provide for you, protect you, guide you, then this is a huge, huge sin of oppression against you. Now, there are some fathers who disappear, but they still provide from far. They'll send money. And there are some fathers who you know where they are. They haven't completely disappeared because they've just gone on to marry someone else and have children with that woman, or she already has children. And then you find out he's treating them better than you. He is providing for them, protecting them, and guiding them, and neglected his own children. This is more common than you think. And the malignant narcissist will triangulate you with the other children, and the man-child will be controlled by the new wife, and she will make him care about her children, whether she has children from a previous marriage or with him. She'll make him care about them more than you. She might even make him cut you off if she's malignant or if she's, highly narcissistic. So there are different scenarios here. And there are some fathers who completely disappear. You don't know where they are. You have no contact for them. And they don't want to be found. So I would say, look for them in the beginning, because it's good for you to know who your father is if he's disappeared. Do look for him. Do try and track him down. But if you get the impression that he doesn't want to be found and he avoids you and runs from you, then leave it. Otherwise, you're going to bring yourself more trauma. And the rejection trauma you get from fathers runs deep. And you'll carry that into your future relationships. So you'll have terrible anxiety and you'll have a terrible fear of abandonment. Okay, because the person who was meant to care for you abandoned you. So you'll have this subconscious fear that everyone you get involved with will eventually leave you, and you'll become overly clingy, or you'll completely detach. Right? Sometimes people detach completely knowing that, one day they're going to leave me too. So you can never fully engage and be present emotionally in a relationship. You're so terrified of investing yourself and your emotions and your heart and everything into this relationship, only for that person to just get up and leave you one day. So you always have one foot in and one foot out. And this causes a problem anyway in your relationship, because the other person notices this and gets fed up. So it can go either way. But it's something that you need to resolve. And if you can't, then you have to let it go. You really do. Otherwise, you will spend the rest of your life with a father wound, when it's actually his problem to carry. It's not your burden to carry, it's his. He will be accountable for that and not you. And you also get the fathers who pop in and out of your life whenever they feel like it. So they might show up 1 year, and then 3 years they disappear, and then they'll show up again in year 4, and so on. And it creates serious instability. But he would have been like that from before. This is the man-child. Okay, this is what a man-child is like as a father. If he decides that he wants to wash his hands off responsibility because he can't be bothered to raise kids, it's too hard. When times get tough, they run. These men run. Or they just hop into another relationship and think that life will be better with a woman who has no children until she has children, and then he'll do the same to her. This is what they do, unfortunately. And this can be really difficult to deal with if, like I mentioned before, your wali, your father, is required to attend your marriage ceremony and he's not around. You can't find him, you can't contact him. Or he's very unreliable. He doesn't keep his word. He doesn't attend important occasions and events. And it can be very stressful dealing with a father like this. So, for this purpose, I would look for him. And if you do find him, perhaps suggest that he does a power of attorney for your brother or your uncle, just in case, because he's so unreliable. And if you don't find him at all, then just make dua that Allah makes it easy for you, and that whenever you do need a mahram, that the sheikh or the mufti or the judge whom you're dealing with in your situation will accept another male relative as your mahram because of the power of attorney. So this is just some advice I'm giving to you if you're in this situation, as it can really help and it will come in really handy when you need it. The next question is, my parents keep rejecting all good marriage proposals for me. What do I do? So in this situation, Islamically, you can go to a mufti or a judge and they will issue a fatwa for you for the judge to get you married and stand in as your wali. So they will call your father in or your mother to find out the reasons why they're rejecting all the good proposals. And if they find that your father is just being stubborn and cruel and your mother has no good reason to stop you from getting married, then to protect you from sin, the judge will stand in as your wali. And if he believes the man who is proposing is a good man, he will go ahead and get you married to him. Now, if the father causes a problem over this, he can get arrested, because this has now become a court order that he has to accept, because this had to happen as a result of his own bad behavior and actions. Okay? Now, it's not great to get married this way. It's really not. So try and resolve your issues with your father so it doesn't get to this. But if you have parents in category 1 who try to stop you from moving on with your life and getting married and having children, then you might need to resort to getting a fatwa and a court order being put in place so that you can get married and move on with your life. And it's really important that the man understands your situation, because you could be very vulnerable to predators in this situation. So when narcissists know that you have a careless father and a difficult mother and you've had to resort to the court to get married, it could put you in a very vulnerable situation if you're marrying the wrong person. Okay, so it's very, very important that you do your due diligence with this and get other male relatives to vet him, because you really can't be risking it. You cannot risk marrying someone who is not an empath when you're in this situation. He will take full advantage of your vulnerability otherwise. Don't say I didn't warn you. These men can turn out to be the most abusive men ever because they're cowards. They know for sure that you're not going to have a father running to your rescue. Okay? So please do your due diligence when you meet someone, especially when you do not have male relatives behind you to support you. The next question is, my parents have cut me from my inheritance as punishment for being a disappointment. What do I do? So you have to assess if it's worth taking this to court or not. If it's like £3,000, £5,000, £10,000, it's not worth it. But if the amount of inheritance that you could get is in the hundreds and thousands or millions, then yes, take it to court, because this is your right. It's your right even to small amounts of money, but don't waste your energy and your time taking your parents to court over a small amount of money. Okay, try and practice ihsan, and always remember that this will be in their scale of bad deeds, not yours. They're the ones who are taking away your rights. They're the ones who are oppressing you. They are the ones who are in the wrong. So if they're going to be petty and take away your rights because you did something that they didn't like, then, it's their burden to carry. They need to fear Allah. Maybe get a mediator involved who can remind them and tell them that what they're doing is oppressive. Maybe if they hear it from someone else, they'll take it seriously. Another question is, my mother has not spoken to me in 4 years because I will not divorce my wife. What do I do? So, in this situation, your parents cannot ask you to do something that's considered haram. So if you love your wife and she's done nothing wrong to you, you are happy, everything is great, everything's fine, but it's just your parents who don't like her and they're demanding that you divorce her with no valid reason except for the fact that they don't like her, then you can't obey them in this. Okay, it's oppressive for you to obey them in something like this because she's done nothing wrong to you. Okay, it's different if they see so much evil from her and perhaps they see that you're so codependent and you're treated like a doormat and they're getting really upset at seeing you controlled and abused by her and they've demanded that you divorce her. That's a different scenario, okay, because they're worried about you. But when you're happy with her and she's done nothing wrong to you and it's just because they've had a fallout or she's not their choice and they demand that you divorce, and if you don't, silent treatment or will cut you off or no inheritance, and you need to put your foot down and protect the family that you've chosen to create, because your wife is now your responsibility and any children who have come from her. So I would be diplomatic about this. Try and be compassionate with your parents. Find out why they don't like her. And then find ways from those reasons to see how you can change their mind about her. Okay, maybe they haven't given her a chance. Maybe they've just seen, the exterior. Maybe because she's come from a different culture and so on, that they don't like her. So get a mediator involved if you need help with it. But you can always change it around by letting them see a different side of her and then eventually like her. It's happened, it's happened to loads of people. But if you allow the silent treatment and the no contact to drag, it's only going to get worse. And you're going to gain sins in the process because you're allowing it to happen when you could potentially solve the problem. The next question is, what do I do if my mother forbids me from contacting and seeing my father after all the abuse she went through with him and the bitterness? But I feel sorry for him as he is sick and alone. So in this situation, your mother has to understand that her relationship with him is completely separate to your relationship with him. And there are rights and duties and responsibilities that you have towards each other as father and daughter. So you need to remind her of this and let her know that it's not because you're not loyal to her, but it's because for the sake of Allah, you need to do this for your father because he's sick and he's alone. So he might have been a good father to you. He might have provided for you and been there for you, but the relationship between him and your mother was so toxic, okay? And that's why she can't forgive him and why she resents you for being there for him when she'd rather just see him suffer and die alone, right? That would be her revenge. And you're getting in the way of that revenge. So she's going to be angry with you. So I would look at your mother with compassion because it's understandable as to why she would feel like that. However, she needs to understand that both relationships are completely separate from each other. I mean, a lot of mothers as well will be angry and bitter when they see their children send money to help the malignant father who's very sick, or the man-child father who abandoned them, and the mother believes that he doesn't deserve it, right? He didn't treat the children well, he was narcissistic, malignant, abusive. But what happens in this scenario is sometimes when you see a malignant father get so sick and frail and weak, you can't help but feel sorry for him. Even after all the tyranny he put the family through, sometimes a level of empathy is activated in you that causes you to help and be there for him. And even if you're not there for him physically because you don't want to be around him, you will send money. And if the malignant father did look after you financially when you were younger, then it's only right that you look after him financially when he needs that help in his old age. So again, this comes from ihsan and appreciation for the good that he did, right? Even if it's such a small amount of good, you're still giving back to him in his old age when he needs you. And some mothers can't understand this. But if you have the money to pay for his operation or pay for his upkeep in old age because of the good he did, then this will heal you. And seeing him so weak and frail may actually help to eliminate all the hate you have for him in your heart. Okay, we go back to compassion and realizing that he became a malignant narcissist and psychopath because of his own upbringing, because he never experienced love, because of all his issues. And it may be very difficult for you to see that and sympathize with him when he's in monster mode and tyrannical and strong and screaming at everyone. But you'll feel that compassion for him when you see the beast fall, right? It's scary for a lot of people to see him completely lose his power and turn into a small child who is scared of being ill and in hospital and about to undergo an operation. You can't help but feel sorry for them, especially if they know they're on their deathbed or nearing death. Okay? Now, some fathers at this point may ask for your forgiveness, and some may finally be humbled at this stage of their life before they've reached the stage of death. So it's for you. So you can finally let go of the hate and resentment you have when you realize that at the end of the day, this life is so short and that we will all go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we will all answer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that we will get our due rights on the Day of Judgment. Nothing's gone to waste. No rights have been taken from us that we will not get back on the Day of Judgment. So it's best to, let go of those feelings that hold us back in life from moving on and having healthy relationships with others. Because when we hold that hatred in our hearts, we can never flourish as human beings. It weighs us down. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sometimes allows you to see the beast fall so that you can finally find some compassion in your heart for your father or your mother and start your healing journey so you can finally get over your traumas and move on with your life. And I know this is easier said than done when you've been through extreme abuse, like extreme violence, parental rape, black magic and other awful things. You will need to work through this with a therapist, and no one's asking you to forgive your parents if you can't, because there are so many people who, even when they see their parents in this critical stage of life, are unable to forgive them and move on. And this is at the detriment of their parents who are in need of their children's mercy at this time, but they didn't prepare for this end, right? They didn't prepare for this time when they would need the compassion, empathy, and mercy of their children. They didn't think about those things when they were busy abusing their children when they were younger and also as adults. Okay, I'm talking about parents in category 1. So this can be one of their punishments, because they're not having a good ending to their life when they have so many people around them who are so upset with them, who have been oppressed by them, who are traumatized by them, and they have no one there for them to pray for them and forgive them. This is a disaster for narcissistic parents. And this is why they get scared of death. This is why when they're on their deathbed and they realize no one likes them, and their empathic children, who would have been their sadaqah jariyah for them had they treated them well, are not there for them to forgive them and all of that. It scares them because that's when they need their empathic children the most. They will regret at that point putting the narcissistic children on a pedestal and abusing the hell out of their good children, because it's not those narcissistic children who are going to be praying for them or be their sadaqah jariyah. And narcissists need sadaqah jariyah more than anyone else because of everything they've done in this world to harm people. So it's a mercy for them to have good children who would pray for them after their death. They would pray for their mercy and forgiveness. But when you've neglected those good children, what are you left with? You're left with nothing. You may have left millions behind in this world that you're proud of. But the most important thing you could have left behind is the righteous child who would have prayed for you and would have done it out of love rather than out of obligation, because there's a huge difference in the dua of a person who loves and the one who is doing it out of obligation. So narcissists miss out big time on this blessing and this lifeline. You can see how Allah gives them so many lifelines, but they abuse them and lose them, and they only realize when it's too late. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu reported that the Prophet ﷺ said, إذا مات الإنسان انقطع عنه عمله إلا من ثلاثة إلا من صدقة جارية أو علم ينتفع به أو ولد صالح يدعو له. When a human being dies, their deeds end except for three: ongoing charity, beneficial knowledge, or a righteous child who prays for them. This is in Sahih Muslim. And Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu also reported that the Prophet ﷺ said, إن الله عز وجل ليرفع الدرجة للعبد الصالح في الجنة فيقول يا رب أني لي هذه فيقول باستغفار ولدك لك. Verily Allah Almighty will raise the status of His righteous servants in paradise, and they will say, O our Lord, how did this happen? And Allah will say, this is from your child seeking forgiveness for you. So in the dunya, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raises the status of the parents, and in the akhirah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raises the status of the children. So Jannah is placed under the feet of the mothers and fathers too in the dunya, and in the akhirah, forgiveness and mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lies in the dua of the righteous child. So the status of the righteous child in Jannah is very, very high. So this is just a reminder for those who always use and abuse the parent card in this life. They need to be very careful with that. And unfortunately, you will find some parents in category 1 who will not have any remorse for the bad they did, even on their deathbed. Okay, there are some people who remain arrogant until the last moment. They don't seek forgiveness, they don't care, they have no compassion or empathy or sadness for what they put their family members through whatsoever. Unfortunately, these people will die the death of Pharaoh, and it is those people who will not get forgiven. So make lots of dua that your parents are not among those people and that you do not become those parents. Now this leads me on to another question someone asked, which is, our parents demand so much of our salaries from us, claiming that it's their right. Is this true? In Islam, no, this is not their right. However, if parents need to be provided for, then this responsibility falls on the shoulders of the qawams in the family. So it's the men who are responsible financially for their parents. And if they have no sons, then this responsibility falls on the daughters. So they all come together to look after their parents, but they're not owed their salaries. because so many parents who have money are demanding the salaries of their daughters in particular, even when they don't need it. But this is another form of oppression. Okay, so if they have money, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has looked after them financially and they have enough to live on and they're okay, they can cover all their expenses, then they shouldn't be asking for the salaries and money from their children. But if they are in need of money, especially for medical expenses or to cover their bills, then yes, the children should come together to do that, and the men are the ones who should be taking care of this. And I know, there are so many deadbeat men out there who don't do this, and the responsibility is always given to the daughters. Maybe the daughters earn more money, or they're more responsible, they're more, empathic towards their parents than the boys are. And this responsibility always gets pushed on to them, but you're going to get rewarded for that, inshallah. So I understand how frustrating it is to have male relatives who are not responsible, but Islamically, they'll be held accountable for this because they are the qawwams in the family. Or meant to be, shall I say. So that's the Islamic ruling of fiqh on that. And the very last question is this. My mother is so abusive, but she prays so much and often goes to Umrah. How can narcs do this if they are so awful and have no fear of Allah? Well, this is the $1 million question, isn't it? And there are different answers to this, but the main one is that it's a facade. Okay, they want to look religious so that they can manipulate you with religion and make people think that they're good people and pious. And it doesn't make any sense either for them to not be religious, but then use distorted meanings of the Quran and Hadith to abuse you. And another reason is because they feel threatened by you. So if you're practicing and your light irritates their demons, then they kind of get scared because they know that they should be doing this. They know they should be praying and fasting and doing all the worship rituals. So when they see you do it, they have to be better than you. So they're competing with you because they hate more than anything for the empath to be better. So they will compete with you in this, but for different reasons and with different intentions. So they always have to be the top, the best at everything, and praised for everything. So if you are better than them in something, it makes them feel weak. So even if they don't want to pray, even if they don't want to fast and read Quran, they're forced to do it to trump you. That's it, basically. So yeah, I hope that's answered your question. I'm losing my voice now, as you can probably tell. So I'll end it here. But I hope you found it helpful, inshallah, and that it's given you a deeper understanding and more clarity on the subject of parents from an Islamic perspective. And just as a final note, I'd like to remind you that no one's parents are perfect. Okay, always go back to the Quran and Sunnah and Islamic law to figure out how to deal with your parents and use the framework I have provided for you of the 4 categories of parents to assess what you should be doing and how you should be dealing with your parents. Because there are different types of parents and each one of them needs a different approach. You can't treat all parents the same for the reasons I've given you in these 2 podcasts, okay? So do like the podcast if it's helped you. Do share it with those whom you feel could benefit from it. And do subscribe to the channel if you'd like to be notified of future podcast releases. Thank you for listening, if you're still with me until now. May Allah bless you. And until the next podcast, inshallah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.